Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has filed a request for an official pardon from the president's office, adding further uncertainty to his long-running corruption trial. Netanyahu is facing allegations of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust, all charges that he has denied. The charges were first filed in 2019, and since then, Netanyahu has been battling court cases and uncertainty over his political future. He remains the only sitting prime minister in Israel's history to stand trial, which is yet to be concluded. Netanyahu says he wanted to complete the legal process until the end, but added that ending the trial immediately would bring national unity. Joining me now to discuss is Jon Allen, former Canadian ambassador to Israel. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador.
My pleasure.
So Netanyahu has spent the last few years insisting on his innocence as this trial played out. Does he not have to admit guilt in order to receive a pardon?
Legally, he does not have to. There is within the president's power the ability to pardon him without admitting guilt and without the trial finishing. But that's a very exceptional use of the pardon power. And I would imagine that the president would be reluctant to do it. The request for a pardon will be submitted to the Justice Department, to the Attorney General, and they'll have to provide some advice back to the president before any decision is taken.
Why do you think that he chose this particular moment to ask for a pardon? Is it something he may have been considering for some time? Could he have been waiting until the release of the hostages and possibly the end of the war? What is the significance of the timing here?
Well, just to recall that he did make a request for a pardon years ago. There was a negotiation with the previous Attorney General, but the requirement was that he admit guilt and resign and not run again. So that didn't happen. He's doing it now following efforts by President Trump to encourage President Herzog of Israel to grant the pardon. And I think he's trying to take advantage of that request that President Trump made in the Knesset some weeks ago, announcing his Trump peace plan. I think he argues essentially that this is going to bring unity to the country. And 5 opposition leaders have already said just the opposite, that granting this pardon would create division and really be a threat to the rule of law of Israel.
So if President Herzog does decide to grant him a pardon, how are we likely to see this play out?
Well, he would grant him a pardon. The charges would be dropped. Netanyahu would continue his efforts and campaign to be re-elected. An election has to happen by October 2026. And he would use this to tell the Israeli people that there's no guilt shadowing his election and that they should re-elect him again.
We know that Netanyahu has faced a lot of pressure to resign over the corruption allegations alongside his handling of the war in Gaza over the past couple of years, both at home and abroad. You mentioned Trump. You know, how would this pardon be seen on the world stage?
Well, President Trump would welcome it, obviously, and probably his cabinet. Prime Minister Netanyahu's cabinet has already advocated for it. I think the rest of the world would see this as the opposition leaders had, as another undermining of the rule of law. I think we have to remember that when I was ambassador, for example, Prime Minister Ehud Olmert was not yet under indictment, but there were talks of corruption charges at the time. And Netanyahu, who was the leader of the opposition, demanded that he resign even before he was indicted, and he did resign. And Netanyahu subsequently won the next election. So now we have a case where Netanyahu's actually on trial. He didn't resign when he was charged. He didn't resign when he was put on trial. And now he's trying to get out of the 3 charges. It's quite ironic.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your time this morning. That is Jon Allen, former Canadian ambassador to Israel and senior fellow at the Bill Graham Center.